Hello, and welcome to the music of the Colossus. What makes a musical composition in a game so beautiful is the conflicting emotions used to complement that game. Shadow of the Colossus is a game with an interesting blend of both epic and melancholy music. This is one of the main reasons that Shadow of the Colossus' soundtrack is so special, because of how the compositions are used to complement each Colossus encounter in the game. Hence, it has one of the most memorable game soundtracks. In Shadow of the Colossus, you take on the role of Wanda, who is trying to resurrect his beloved Mono. In doing so, he travels to the Forbidden Land to ask the god Dormin to bring Mono back to life, on the condition that he slays the 16 Colossi that roam the land.
The track which you are introduced to when first starting the game is called To the Ancient Land. This song is played right at the beginning of the game and sets a somber tone for the entire plot. This is played during a cinematic cutscene of which the main character travels to the desolate region known as the Forbidden Land, with the music accompanying the scene creating an atmosphere of sadness and loneliness. The ambiguity of the music played is also shown to represent the character's loneliness, with the player not being able to tie the music to specific people or culture. This adds to the character's isolation in the scene. The music is then shown to change with a more quiet and somber tone. This is shown to have a variation with a rising in the pitch, which is shown to change throughout the game. The music is used at the start of the game is shown to have a requiem-esque sound to it, that allows for a more mournful and retrospective tone. This tone is shown to be a core theme of the message and purpose of the game. The progression of the game purely relies on the deaths of the 16 Colossi. The game is shown to have a difference in the encounters of the Colossi, with some being peaceful and docile at times, while others appear to be more aggressive and antagonistic towards the player. However, when confronting the Colossi, some are more aggressive and will attack Wanda on sight, while the others are more docile. Now, to contrast with the game's use of silence to create a metaphorical bridge between the encounters and the silence before, the music picks up when you encounter one of these Colossi. This musical piece is called The Open Way, and was orchestrated by Kawatani, and was used to create a sense of wonder and curiosity. This allows the player to observe the Colossi in a different light, from something that is to be hunted, generating a feeling of empathy rather than it just being another hunting target. This works well with the Requiem-esque music to generate a feeling of loss throughout the game. With the Colossi, and not just wonder, the feeling of anticipation stays until the Colossus is angered, and we get to see the dramatic contrast between the tones as they transfer from a calm, soothing tone to a more epic and violent one. Here is where we see the wonder of the soundtrack at its peak, the build up from silence to anticipation, and then to the final impact. This is to the tipping point, as the end of the battle marks the end of a life. When striking down the final blow, instead of being congratulated by victory music, we are instead greeted by another requiem, the end of battle. This is used to influence the player and draw a connection to the lifeless girl that the whole hunt was started for. This is done to create doubt in the player as to if Wanda's actions in killing the Colossi are justifiable or righteous. This results in the player questioning these events rather than a euphoric feeling of victory. This allows for parallels to be drawn between Gel's and the Colossi's life that will become more and more painfully obvious with each fight and music track. This feeling of despair in Wanda's actions can be seen in the game's music, and this quote from Kawatani: "The music feels like you might have saved someone you love, but you couldn't save everyone you loved." This ultimately changes your perspective of the world, as the guilt of valuing the life of one over another starts to corrupt Wanda, leaving you to think about what you have done, resulting in the player being made to evaluate their own actions, which are further amplified by the lack of sound in between encounters. Earlier I briefly touched upon the fact that Shadow of the Colossus is a game which used silence to accompany its music in a way which effectively displays the grandeur of each track. Shadow of the Colossus creates a musical contrast between silence and its composition by dividing it so that it's silent when you are out exploring the world, and musical when encountering a Colossi or in a cutscene. This leaves you to journey alone, since beside your horse you are alone to explore the empty lands. This gives the player and game a sharp focus and does not give the player any reasons to be distracted and from the actions they have committed or will commit. This is furthered for the absence of the soundtrack that is clear enough for the player to hear the wind and environment to emphasize the feeling of loneliness. The use of music, primarily in the cutscenes and encounters of the game, solidifies the game's impact and message. This also leads to the moments of the game uses silence being more impactful and influential on the player.
While time spent wandering the world is silent, except from the sounds of Wanda, his horse, and their current surroundings. The open nature of the game and lack of life, mixed with the limited amount of music, helps in establishing an atmosphere of solitude, like that used in Ico. Ico is a story of a young boy named Ico who was born with horns, which his village considered a bad omen. Warriors lock him away in an abandoned fortress. During his explorations of the fortress, Ico encounters Yorda, the daughter of the castle's queen. The queen plans to use Yorda's body to extend her own lifespan. Learning this, Ico seeks to escape the castle with Yorda, keeping her safe from the shadow-like creatures that attempt to draw her back. Throughout the game, the player controls Ico as he explores the castle, solves puzzles, and assists Yorda across obstacles. Shadow of the Colossus has a vast orchestral soundtrack which is only played during cutscenes and encounters with the Colossi. The game's musical architecture is of immense ambiguity, which has been inherited from its somewhat sequel and spiritual predecessor Ico. Fumito Ueda, the lead director of both games, stated that Shadow of the Colossus' status as a prequel to the game Ico was simply his take on the game and not actually canon, as he intended for players to decide the details of the story for themselves. But he confirmed the two do have a connection, yet we still don't know what the connection is. This could be the similar narrative and musical features, or the elements that he wanted players to interpret on their own. The concluding piece of the game reiterates to us of the importance that sunlight has on the world, giving us a sense of peace and happiness. This emphasizes on the fact that the worst is done and life can carry on and prosper. This is contradicted in the attitude of this composition. Kawate's music continues responding to the idea to blend emotions in a piece, so that it hints at nothing either being good or bad, sad or happy, black or white. The end of a journey is always hard. The steps that I've taken in the research of the music featured in the game has been a challenging one. The composition and silence are what drive the player, and the lack of narration, voiceovers and text just shows the importance that music has in the game. It puts all details of the game up for discussion, as it isn't explicit in the game and relies purely on what you see. Nothing has been told about who the main protagonist is and his history, who the girl he wants resurrected is, or how she died. All this information is uncharted territory. The music guides the player and helps to imagine how the protagonist is feeling. This, combined with the game's visual environment, just shows how Kawate's compositions replace the game's narration. The emotional status of the game depends on this factor and provides an amalgamation of both epic and melancholy moods.